Every founder thinks that they have already cracked the secret sauce when they start the company, but 9 out of 10 times you find that actually that is not the problem. That is actually an adjacent problem that is actually even more pressing, where there is probably a $100 million or $500 million company waiting to be built, and it's being nimble enough to listen to the market and keep iterating. And while you iterate, you need to stay lean, that you don't burn too much money. So you eventually get to the end point that you want to get to.
Today on the podcast we have Anta, who is CEO and co-founder of Inai, a YC-backed company that's taking on payments and trying to reduce the massive amounts of wastage that happens in subscription revenue. Anta's got a great journey, having worked at Goldman Sachs for over a decade before deciding that wasn't fulfilling and he wanted to do something different. Having always been into health, his first company was a health startup that gave instructions in an audio way. They had multiple pivots along the way and eventually exited, which led him to where he is today. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm Mama from the Bay HQ, and this podcast is powered by HSBC Innovation Banking.
So it's great to have you here today, and it's really exciting to see that you've done two companies that are very different to each other. So I'm looking forward to getting to that later on. But if you go right back to the beginning, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was the dream? What was the ambition?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Amar. So as a kid, I was growing up in India. I actually wanted to be a rocket scientist. Mm-hmm. This is like the 90s in India. There was the story of Abdul Kalam at the time. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to do engineering and then be a rocket scientist. I had some kind of exposure to entrepreneurship because my dad was an entrepreneur. So I think right around the time that I was born, he decided to start his company, and we didn't come from wealth. So I saw him grinding through day after day. It was not a tech startup. It was not VC funded, what have you. I remember him telling us the stories about how he had to trade like a two-wheeler. I think there was, at the time, this was like British Raj, or not British Raj, sorry. This was like licensed Raj, as they call it. So you had to, only certain people could get access to certain things. And he was telling me these stories about how he traded like a two-wheeler to get the initial seed capital to start his business, which is, I think, like 20,000 rupees or something like that. It's like, 200 pounds. So the mind boggles when you think about that.
And then when you're going down that path from becoming an engineer, were you looking at your dad and thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur maybe one day as well? Or were you thinking like, oh, he's had to work so hard, I don't want to do that?
Yeah, I think as a child, I did not want to be an entrepreneur. The concept kind of escaped me. I was clear that I didn't want to work the long hours that he was doing. Maths and numbers were my passion. So engineering seemed like a natural calling for me. And then once I did my engineering, I went straight in to do my MBA, also in India. And the reason I picked the MBA was essentially I wanted to have the fastest path to money after uni. And I had basically a couple of options. I could have gone to the US, taken on a big debt. I think I had a scholarship program, but it was only for a PhD, so not for a master. So if I didn't want to take on debt, then I would have to study for another 5 years, and I didn't quite fancy that. And I figured I'll go into business where I could see money sooner.
What was it when you decided actually you don't want to become a rocket engineer? Where was that switch?
I think around my time in engineering, once I got into my undergrad at the IITs, and I see all these other kids trying to study for the US, and then there are all these stories of, this chap went to Stanford or Harvard or what have you, and this is where they ended up. I think that exposure to capitalism kind of changed my perspective.
Because IIT is like extremely competitive to get into, right? Mm-hmm. How is that environment? Because you said you came from means which maybe were more humble, and then you're going to this university where everybody is now so smart, they've all been so competitive to get there. How did you feel in that kind of environment?
I didn't quite struggle, to be honest. Like, I think most of the kids who were there, they were kind of similar backgrounds. None of them come from wealth, or most of them don't come from wealth. They are all ultra competitive, and competition was kind of natural to me. Like when you're growing up in a country with 1 billion plus population, I think trying to thrive in a competitive environment is kind of ingrained in you. It was kind of drilled into my head. So I actually quite enjoyed it. But what I did do was I was kind of middle of the pack. I didn't kind of beat myself up to kind of be at the top end. or neither did I get to the absolute bottom of the pack. So I kind of made sure that I was kind of in the middle of the pack. So I didn't have to worry about trying to get a job after or trying to get to the next place that wherever I needed to get to.
And then what happened after your MBA?
After MBA, I think I was, because of my passion for numbers, I basically had two options: either to pursue something in operations research, where I did an internship with a company called Asian Paints. They do some phenomenal work there, which was in my summer. And then the other option was to go to finance. And obviously, finance seemed far more lucrative given the amount of money. So I ended up working for a company called Standard Chartered Bank in India. I did that, and then they moved me to Singapore for like a program. I stayed with them for about 12 months, and then I moved to Goldman here in the UK in 2006. So that's when I came to London.
Did you choose to go to London? Or was it more just the opportunity came up, or did you have any ambitions to come here, or what was behind that reason?
I don't think I had any particular ambitions to come here. So I had been here to London when I was on an exchange program. So when I was in my MBA, I had an exchange program to come to ESSEC Business School in Paris, and pretty much all the kids, they want to either come to London or to Switzerland for holiday. So, and the program wasn't particularly, let's say, challenging, if I can call it that. Most of the time, the kids were traveling because you could kind of bundle together your classes on certain weeks, and you could take entire weeks off. So I did travel to the city, and I liked it. But it was a question of somebody had an opportunity. One of my batchmates from my B school, she was working at Goldman, and she kind of referred me to this opportunity. Goldman was kind enough to kind of fly me in, and 12 years I served them.
And how was that experience at Goldman? Was it the whole time you were like, are you really enjoying your career, or when did the seeds of like, maybe I want to do something different come into play?
The first few years were a blur. I started in the credit business, in the structured credit business, and that blew up spectacularly in 2008. So I kind of had about a year or 18 months of the highs, and then, several years of the lows. And then I kind of moved into the asset management side, doing algorithmic trading. So I would say, like any career, it's never one way, right? So I had my ups and downs, but I started getting involved in the startup scene I would say probably after 5-7 years after being at Goldman, because I had a bit more disposable income. I had some investments that I could make, and I wasn't very good at making those investments, at least in the public market. So I said, okay, why don't I try and make some in the private markets? And then some of my friends who were in my circle, they were starting companies, and I said, okay, let's punt 5,000 or 10,000. The SEI scheme is also very kind to you from a tax perspective. So I figured, why not?
One of the things that's interesting for us, we had a lot of people from corporates who are doing quite well, and they're thinking about investing into startups, but it's quite intimidating and they're not sure what to do. So initially, obviously, you're investing in your friends. Do you remember when you started to invest outside of your friend circle? Like, how did you feel about that? How did you get that deal flow, or where was that coming from?
It is very unnerving. I think there was one deal where I got completely swindled, where the person who introduced the deal, I think you generally have these kind of brokers, and the brokers are typically pitching these deals to generally, wealthier or higher disposable income, mid-30s, mid-40s kind of folks. And they tend to be either in investment banks or successful startups usually. And one of these guys kind of pitched a deal to me, and a couple of my friends from the banking circuit, we invested. I think it was like 25K each. And then we figured that, more than 50% of those funds had been siphoned off by this broker. The company didn't even get it. So it was a pretty damning experience. So I kind of learned it the hard way, is you need to do your diligence. And to be honest, if I look back at those years, I clearly didn't know what I was doing, right? Because when you back a company at an early stage, it is, now that I've come on the other side, you are primarily backing the team. You're backing the founders, because what you're backing is an idea that might not exist 3 months from the time you back them. And all those rosy presentations that you see of, 1 12-month, 15-month, or whatever it is, it's just bollocks, because none of that is ever realistically going to happen, at least for the majority of the cases. So I think my advice would be, you are at the early stage, you are really backing the entrepreneur to find a problem statement, and be nimble enough and humble enough to kind of listen to the market feedback to kind of find adjacent problems that they can solve. So that I mean, if I'm investing, that's what I'm looking for.
And you think that because you had that experience, then it starts to make you think, maybe I could do this myself.
That was pretty much it. Like, and again, I think I was naive at the time I took the jump. When I left Goldman in 2017, at the time I had invested in a few companies. Some of my friends were doing quite well, at least glamorized to the outside world. Nobody ever advertises the long hours that the founder has to go through, the mental challenges of coping with the ups and downs of the day and kind of managing yourself. Running out of capital and all those kind of things, managing people. But from the outside, it looks sexy. Like, somebody's raised 15 million, they're at Series B, blah, 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 companies worth X tens of millions. So I said to myself, yeah, let's give this a go. I called up my childhood friend, Karthik, who I had been in touch with since school. So we've known each other since 8th grade, but we hadn't worked together or ever since. At the time, what we were planning to do was actually an app for the NHS. So the idea was the NHS was having very large waiting times. So we decided we would build an app that would allow a consumer to have a virtual queuing system. So imagine you want your child or whatever to be seen by the NHS. I had just had my son at the time, so I was kind of sensitized to this problem statement. You could ping the NHS. The NHS could tell you how far away you were in the queue, and then you could, instead of waiting for hours there, you could be at home in a comfortable environment and go see the doctor when the time arises. And then we had built a video calling infrastructure on the back of it, so there was a triaging function that was already done, so you could be triaged even before you showed up at the hospital. That was the original idea.
Because obviously that's quite different to what you're now doing today. So it's interesting that journey. One thing I think is quite interesting, you said you just had a young son, you'd had 12 years in Goldman Sachs, and at that kind of a stage, I'm guessing there's a lot of identity wrapped up in that status you then had and the position you were then in. What made you think, okay, like, was it almost hard for you to say to people, okay, I'm going to now take this leap? Did your friends around you think, okay, yeah, he's doing the right thing? Or was it a bit of push and pull with people around you trying to encourage or discourage you?
I think the people around me were flabbergasted, to be honest. They still are to this day. I have many of my friends still asking me, are you still running that startup? What are you doing? Have you thought about coming back to banking? Especially when I told my colleagues that, I'm just going to do a company and it's in the health and fitness space. They were like, what do you know about this space? And so it was very much a lot of people telling me, warning me, whether if I was making the right decision or not.
When people are saying these kind of things to you, what gave you the courage to say, actually, I'm going to still do this anyway, even no matter what anybody says?
I think there's a thin line between bravado and stupidity, as they say. I think I might have crossed that line a little bit over there. I think in hindsight, if I were to do entrepreneurship again, I would certainly give up a corporate job, whether it's Goldman or wherever else that if I were to relive my working career. I would still go and start a company, but I probably wouldn't start a fitness company or a health and wellness company, because it's only after you get into the space that more than product market fit, there's also this concept of founder market fit, where is the founder the right person to start a company in this particular vertical? What kind of insights do they bring? Do they have the lasting power and the passion to kind of survive those down days, which there are going to be lots and lots of? And it's not just at the early stage, right? It's all the way to your exit. I don't think at least I had not braced myself mentally. I had not prepared myself mentally at the time to kind of think through all of these before starting a business in that particular space.
We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We just want to give a quick shout out to our headline partners, HSBC Innovation Banking. One of the biggest challenges for so many startups is finding the right bank to support them. Because you might start off and try to use a traditional bank, but they don't understand what you're doing. You're just talking to an AI assistant, or you're talking to somebody who doesn't really understand what it is you're even trying to do. HSBC have got the team they've built out over years to make sure they understand what you're doing. They've got the deep sector expertise, and they can help connect you with the right people to make your dreams come true. So if you want to learn more, check out hsbcinnovationbanking.com. It's one of those really difficult things because even say with this podcast, somebody could be thinking about starting a business. They can listen to a million podcasts. They can read a million articles, a million books. But once you get put into it, then all of a sudden things start becoming more important, right? You start paying more attention. And I think that's always an interesting part sometimes is that the advice always helps more when you're in the thick of it. You can do all the preparation you can, but it's when you're in the thick of it, that's when it's really going to start taking on. But did you actually build that product that you said about the NHS waiting, or did you pivot before that?
We did build the product, but we absolutely sucked at distributing it because none of the hospitals that we talked to were interested in giving us an audience. They just kind of laughed us out of the room. Why would I have the patients come and queue outside? Why would I do this over video? We even took the product to some hospitals back in India. And they thought we were some IT engineers, and we again got laughed out of the room. So we were at the time thinking about like, what can we do now that we have this product? What do we do with it? So we decided to pivot it into fitness, where we created this as a marketplace where fitness instructors instead could be streaming. So instead of it being a video consult with your doctor, it became a video consult or a video lesson with your fitness instructor. We figured the aversion to adoption is much lower in fitness because it's not health information. It's not very sensitive. Clearly, the fitness instructors were keen to make some money. So it seemed like an additional revenue stream. So we pivoted into fitness from health.
And it's interesting because you obviously built the product before testing the market in some ways in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's a lesson you then learn for what you're doing today. But how did you then decide when you're going into the fitness market? Did you approach it differently? Did you talk to more fitness instructors first, or how was that process?
You're absolutely right that this is a mistake that many founders make, and this is a lesson that stays true with me even today. Is like you first go and validate the market. My co-founder keeps asking me this question. Just think about if you had the product, how would you distribute it? That's the first question that you need to answer. And only if you have answered it, because building a product takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. So if you don't have an idea in terms of how you're going to distribute it, that's going to be a big challenge. So we did talk to a lot of, so again, we had multiple pivots along the way. We started by trying to sell this to these boutique fitness studios that are there in London. We went and talked to the likes of the Rebel, the cycling studios in here, and said, you know what you have all these people trying to get into your lessons. The lessons are all only in the city. You can't access those lessons. The class seats only, 30 people or so. Why don't you let me put a camera in there and then stream your lesson so other people can join this class? And again, we got laughed out by every large studio business. So we ended up working with a Pilates instructor in Southwest London. She was an owner-owned business, a founder-owned business. So it was her studio. We just put some cameras in her studio. She was able to convince her clientele that we were going to film the lesson. And essentially, we started live streaming her content, some HIIT and some Pilates lessons. That's how we got started with the content.
And then how did you scale that up?
We had many pivots again along the way. We then figured that shooting video content was much more expensive than shooting audio content. And then we also realized that when you're in a gym, you don't have the time to actually look at your screen in order to work out. So we identified that actually if we could deliver lessons where you were giving audio lessons, think of like a Barry's bootcamp in your year. So if you had the Barry's instructor giving you a lesson over audio, so we pivoted into audio. And then, so we just had a podcast room like this where we would have, Barry's instructors or the Soul Cycle equivalents come in and do these lessons. The first couple of classes, I basically wrote them myself and gave the scripts to them because the instructors weren't familiar with how to do an audio-only lesson, because that's a big jump for the instructors. And then the company kind of went places from there.
During this process as well, you said about the founder product fit, the founder company fit. At what point did you start thinking maybe this isn't the right fit for us?
Yeah, I think, I was a big fitness consumer myself. So one of the things that I thought about was, hey, I'm a big fitness consumer. I understand this product. I go to all of these, boutique studios and do these classes. So I'm sure enough going to be the right person to run this company. But once you get into it, you realize that the audience that you are trying to sell to is typically skew 70 to 80% female than male. And it's like, the 25 to 35, that was the core audience that we were getting in. And I didn't know that at the time I started the business. And trying to reach them on Instagram or TikTok is a very different ballgame that I realized that I just wasn't capable of appreciating. So I had my head of growth come and tell me about, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I have a very different perception of how to position the product. And that's when I started to see that this is not a business that I was best suited to run.
And then, so obviously you had the exit with that company. How did that process work? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so me and my co-founder, we kind of realized that this was going to be a hard business for us to run, and the cost of acquiring customers is enormous. We were kind of blessed that COVID came in 2020, and the usage on the product really took off at the time. We then were in discussions with a gym business and then with an equipment business, and both of whom were fully physical businesses. They didn't have any digital presence. And this seemed like the right time for us to kind of hand over the reins to somebody else. We had a near-death moment because we had a bid from the gym business. They pulled, the physical equipment business, and after giving us an offer, they pulled out. And then we had about, I think a month or so to kind of go back to the second bidder and then try to close the transaction with the second bidder. So it was an eventful experience.
What do you think were the hardest lessons you learned from that experience? 'Cause I think there's going to be so many people listening today, if they are entrepreneurs at the moment, they've started with their company, maybe they're doing well, but they have no real idea about how they're going to exit it or how that process works.
Yeah, I think as a founder, when you start, I think you're extremely focused on how are you going to get this to, on the operational things. And this is something that I've been guilty of myself, is focusing too much on the operational things and not having the time, not taking the time for yourself to think about where do you want to take this business, who's going to eventually find this valuable, for what functionality are they going to find this valuable? Are they going to find it valuable because of revenue, or is it because they just have a large number of users, or is it just your product? And thinking through that might mean a very different strategic decision for your business in terms of how you build the company, the kind of people you hire, the kind of customers you acquire. All of those could be very, very different. So I think, myself included, many founders don't spend enough time thinking about it. And ultimately, we are here as entrepreneurs to make money. So also thinking about, what is your ownership in the structure? How much of that are you giving away to your venture capitalists along the way? How do you make sure that you have enough skin in the game for, and what is a realistic exit that you would be happy with? And at what point do you think you are not best suited to kind of continue building whatever it is that you're building, and maybe it's another person who needs to take over, whether it's an exit or you bring an exec to kind of run in and you become like a non-exec and a president or what have you. So there's all of these variables to kind of think about.
And then obviously once you exited, there's, I guess, some element of you've let go of your baby and there's relief, but probably relief as well. What did you do afterwards? Did you take a bit of a break? Did you give yourself some time to relax? Or was it straight on to the next thing?
I didn't give ourselves a break at all. So I think we exchanged on a Friday, and then we incorporated a new company on the Monday. We had been discussing, me and my co-founder, Karthik, we had been discussing what we would do after the exit for the previous 3 months. We had already started our application to YC because we had applied to YC Startup School for the first business, which was Oro, which is the fitness product, and we didn't get through. So we were quite gutted by that, and we were like, okay, we need to make sure that we get through YC for the second one at least. So we had started the application process in February when we were talking to these potential acquirers. I think the acquisition happened, call it the end of April, and then in May we had started the new business. So unfortunately, we didn't give ourselves any time at all, but we had kind of decided what we were going to do. This was a problem. So what we are doing now is helping companies reduce payment failures at checkout. And ours was a digital content subscription business, the previous one. And one of the big bugbears for us was you think you have signed up so many subscribers. You spend $100 or £100 to get the customer on Facebook or Instagram or what have you, to get them to the page. And either they drop off at that page or they sign up and then the payment fails for whatever reason for the second or third month. And this is a pain for every subscription business is, they lose especially in fitness, I think businesses lose anywhere from 10 to 15% even on a monthly basis. So you could be churning half or more of your user base every year. So we were grappling with this, and on the weekends we would be looking at, getting the spreadsheets of Stripe and trying to figure out what were the reasons why these payments were failing. And that experience kind of enlightened us in terms of what a big opportunity there was. Once the exit was done, we knew that the exit was going to happen. We talked to a few other companies who were building, audio subscription for meditation or affiliated content, and they all had similar problems. So that's when we decided that this is the next likely problem to solve. Because we had this experience ourselves, we believed that we had the insights on what to pitch to the founder of a medium-sized or a small-sized company and how to position it. And we already knew what are the things we need to do in order to solve those problems.
I guess that makes a lot of sense, because then you are the customer yourself and you know exactly the same issues they're going through, the stresses they have. And you can really relate, I guess, to every customer you're going to get. And you mentioned there about you really wanted to get into YC the second time around. What was it about Y Combinator attracted you? And did it live up to your hopes?
I think it's this magical thing, right? Almost you hear of these highly successful companies that have been built by founders who don't have any experience previously of building these companies, whether it's Stripe, whether it is DoorDash, whether it's Dropbox, what have you. And the kind of content they put out in terms of how the founder should be thinking about 0 to 1, I think we were quite enamored by that. And we wanted to have that kind of experience because while we had run a company, we had kind of learned it on the job instead of really strategizing and planning ahead. And the second time around, we wanted to at least learn from our mistakes and learn from other people's mistakes, which is what we were hoping that YC would teach us. And I think it was a phenomenal experience. Luckily for us, it was fully remote. I had a young family. My co-founder Karthik, he had a young family. He had a daughter. I think she's 3 years older than my son. So I don't think either one of us would be able to kind of dump our families and then back off to SF for 3 months or what have you. So I think it kind of worked out well for us that it was a remote batch and we were able to get in.
What do you think were some of the biggest learnings you had from that batch?
I think it's about having small measurable targets and kind of essentially having your entire team focusing on 2 or 3 things only, small measurable targets that your entire company lives and breathes by, right? I think that was one. The second thing was try and not do too many things and do only one thing well. But I don't think we did enough of that in our company, to be honest. Not raise a lot of money. Again, I don't think we did that because we were in 2021 and we ended up raising a bunch of money. When YC's every advice is to not raise too much and not dilute too much at the seed stage. I think as we go along, as we are further along in the journey with Inai, that is again a lesson that I keep reminded of is, don't dilute too much. Don't raise too much before product market fit. And basically, money is not going to solve your product market fit problem.
Obviously, when we're looking at today now, do you feel like you have solved that product market fit and you are at that stage now where exactly because obviously you've had to refine the product and change the way you position it. Do you feel now in a happy place that you have achieved what?
Yes, I think we feel like we are in early stages of product market fit now that we've been at this and refining the product. Again, the product has had multiple variants. I think the clearest sign of product market fit, at least how YC positions is that there is more demand than you can support. Right? When customers are asking for more and more and you just find that you are not able to keep up with that demand. I feel like we are in the early stages of that phase, having been at it for nearly 3 years. Some of my learnings are, I wish we had stayed more lean in the earlier years so that we could have gotten to this stage sooner. Every founder thinks that they have already cracked the secret sauce when they start the company, but 9 out of 10 times you find that actually that is not the problem. That is actually an adjacent problem that is actually even more pressing, where there's probably a $100 million or $500 million company waiting to be built, and it's being nimble enough to listen to the market and keep iterating. And while you iterate, you need to stay lean that you don't burn too much money. So you eventually get to the end point that you want to get to. I think that's been my biggest learning with my entrepreneurial journey so far.
And what do you think you've done a lot better this time around compared to with Oro, in terms of the way you've run the company and the way that everything has gone internally?
First of all, I think we made more money in this business than we made ever in the previous business as a company. So I think that is a start. Secondly, I think we were building in a space that we understand very well, and where I believe the founders can, or the founding team can deliver significant value from the product. So now, admittedly, we don't come from payments, but I spent 12 years as an algorithmic trader at Goldman. Karthik has been in machine learning and AI for the last 16 years. He worked at companies like Samsung. He's had a few exits himself as an early stage employee. So data is something that we really understand, and we are able to help merchants. That's typically our customer. Our customer is like an e-commerce merchant. We work with companies like Huel here in the UK. So it's typically a merchant, and helping them identify the issues with their payments and what they can do in order to deliver value for their business. And we feel much more comfortable explaining that value proposition to a business owner than to a consumer. I just don't think we were cut out of the cloth to kind of market our product to a consumer. It's a very different mindset. It's a lot of branding and positioning that goes in a consumer product. I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of branding that goes in behind a B2B product as well today, because there's just so many of these startup products that are available in the market. But I think it's a very different mindset. I think from a founder market fit perspective, we are much better suited to run a company like this. And having had the consumer experience, I also learned that, since Facebook or TikTok, the consumer channels have gotten more and more saturated. So you don't own the distribution channel. And that means you don't control your CAC, which then makes it very difficult to build a consumer business. And consumer businesses are also more risky. I'm in my 40s now. I think I would sort of sleep better if I have a 80% chance of making a $50 million company, as opposed to having a 10% chance of making a $500 million company. I'm just making these numbers up, but I think I prefer the former trade, the risk rewards, than the latter. So I think it's a question of which of these more aligns with what is it that you want to achieve as a founder, and you kind of pick the path that's best suited for you.
So you said it's been 3 years now since YC. What do you think are some of your biggest milestones, or the things you're most happy about that you've been able to achieve?
I think hiring a great team. I think you can't build a company without having great people around you. So I'm very proud of the team that we have today at Inai, whether it's in the engineering side or the product side or on the sales side. So or on the support side, I think that's something that I'm very proud of in terms of the kind of customers and the companies that we are working with and what we have been able to deliver for them. I think, again, that is something that we are very proud of. Still a long way to go, very early days in the journey as a business, but those are probably the two top things that I can think of. And
then looking forwards, where do you hope to be? What's the dream for the rest of the time you've got with Inai?
I think, we are building in like a payments data space. So and as you know, there's more data today than ever was, right? And how can we help companies make better use of their payments data to get a business outcome? So, and I think we are only scratching the surface in terms of that problem. If you think about it as a data optimization problem with all the tooling that is coming out with generative AI, I think we are very early stages of that. I would definitely want to exit this company as well at some point, and I don't know when that time is, but it feels like we're still in the early stages.
Have you got anything exciting coming up soon that you can Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we very recently launched a product called Revive. It was fully based on our experiences running a subscription business. So maybe for the listeners, if you either work in a subscription company or you know some companies that are in the subscription business, but they have issues with involuntary churn. So we launched this product called Revive, which is a machine learning based product, which essentially helps subscription companies reduce involuntary churn. So what happens is you sign up for your subscription to a meal bar or a meal kit or your food delivery box. You pay for the subscription, you put your card in, but then the third or the fourth month or the fifth month, the payments can fail, and up to 50% of your churn is actually involuntary from a business perspective, meaning your customer hasn't canceled it, but because there are so many middlemen involved in the payments ecosystem, there could be a signal which is mistaken to be fraud, and it can actually result in a payment decline. And nobody spends enough money or time trying to optimize that journey. So what we've come up with is a machine learning based model that identifies the right time for a business to retry a failed payment, and how can we recover that failed payment without any input from your end customer, so they continue to get use of the service and you get to continue to keep that customer and build LTV.
What do you enjoy the most of everything you're doing today?
It's working with the team and the independence. As I said, I have a young family, so I think when you are a business owner, you are able to. I mean, it is hard. You'll be working 16-hour days, but it's the 16 hours that I pick to work rather than somebody else's. So there might be weekends that I might be working, but I need to pick up my son from school after this. So I'll be heading home to the bus stop to try and pick him up. So it's having the independence to manage your life. That's one. And then also trying to identify a problem statement in the market. And I'm always looking as a founder, and that's I think that was one of the features of being an entrepreneur is we are always looking to find interesting problems that people have that where there is a commercial value associated with it, and how can we solve that problem?
I know one thing you mentioned as well is about how fitness is quite an important part of your life. And one thing I know for myself is that, so in my, I used to be in the classy national squad. I've done loads of obstacle course races all around the world and things like that. But during this founder period, I found that I haven't been prioritizing that working out fitness enough. And how have you been able to manage that? How have you been able to prioritize that and look after yourself at the same time? So you've got all these different competing priorities, right? So you've got your wife, you've got your kid, you've got also trying to keep your health. Have you found that easy to manage, or when have you made mistakes that you've maybe now been able to rebalance and get better at that?
I mean, I definitely made mistakes. I think, believe it or not, when I was running the fitness company, I was not very fit because I was spending all this time trying to, run the company. So after the exit, I kind of said to myself that, if I don't have a healthy mind and a healthy body, there is no way that I'm going to be able to put through the 16 hours or 15 hours or whatever it is that that I need to do. So we ended up setting up a gym at home upstairs. So me and my wife, we kind of alternate every day. So, Mondays she will work out and Tuesdays I will. And so I just make sure that I get those 30 minutes in. It's not going to be a long session, but 30 minutes is plenty good for me. If you do it consistently enough and you do it often enough, then it's plenty good. So I just make sure that I get the workout in by 6 a.m. I go and play badminton on Friday nights after my kid has gone to sleep. So it's about trying to find, just those pockets of time that you dedicate for yourself. It doesn't need to be long, but as long as you do that, I think you will find a way to kind of stay healthy. And to be honest, I find that the days when I work out, I have much more energy. I'm fresher. I'm able to come up with ideas to solve problems. I am able to just get more out of myself.
Thanks so much for sharing your story today. And I love all the different insights you've given. We're going to go to a quick fire questions now. Mm-hmm. So first one is, who are 3 British Asians you think are doing incredible work and you'd love to shout them out?
Shout out Ashish from PayPal Ventures. He's doing some incredible work from the VC side, and he's also been particularly helpful to founders. So that's one. Deepti Patankar, she's a lawyer. She helps founders raise capital, close deals, and she's also a dear friend. So again, another one. Rishabh Kaul, he used to be at AdSmith. He was, I think, head of marketing at AdSmith, and now he's trying to bring a community of Asians in Europe who are in tech and in startups. So another name to shout out.
If people want to find out more about you, find out more about your company, where should they go to?
go to inai.io, inai.io. That's our business. You can find me up on LinkedIn. My name is 24 letters, so it might be difficult to find me on LinkedIn. But if you just look up Inai, and I'll show up as one of the founders.
Yeah, I think that happened to me when I was looking you up as well, so trying to find it. Is there anything that you need help with right now, that Inai needs help with, that the audience listening today might be able to help you with?
Absolutely. I think we, as a young business, visibility is key. So if you know any companies that are having problems with payment failures, involuntary churn, what have you, then please do come look for us. Give us a shout. We'd love to help. So any help is welcome.
So thanks so much for coming on today. Have you got any final words?
No, I very much enjoyed this session. Thank you, Amar, for having me. And I hope there are other founders that might find some of the learnings that I've had helpful.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.